Hi guys, I'm Joe the ISBoxer, and I'm going to help you get set up with macros and key bindings in Cryptic Studios games, including Star Trek Online, Neverwinter, and Champions Online. So I've got my 5 guys in Star Trek Online, and let's take a look at in ISBoxer what we do. So this is a macro set. You find it under ISBoxer, Game Helpers, Cryptic Studios, and this one was generated by the Quick Setup Wizard because I had it in the Quick Setup Wizard at the Game Key Bindings tab. Down here I had ISBoxer generate these macros for me, and they can be loaded via isboxer-binds.txt in the game. And this option, this one's the default, and I showed this to you in all my walkthrough videos using the autofill button, including the Star Trek Online video. But this other option allows you to use per character macros to assist and follow instead of using the default system, which first targets using the targeting hotkey and then assists using the follow or assist hotkey. So in Star Trek Online and Champions Online, at least, these macros will work. And it's basically just a list of key bindings here of what button is going to assist each of my guys. Like if I'm playing the guy in window 1, then it'll be control number 1. Or if I'm in window 2, it'll be control num 2. Likewise, for follow, it's alt num 1 and alt num 2 for whichever guys I'm playing. So in the macro set, we can check, and each of these macros is set up. This is a macro that makes it so that alt num 1 does follow slot 1, and control num 1 assists slot 1. And following is going to be, for slot 2, it's going to be alt num 2, and assist would be control num 2, and so on up to 5, because that's how many guys I have in my team. So looking at this, each of the macros has a set of commands and a key combination. You have to assign a key combination or you're not going to be able to use the macro. So ISBoxer is going to activate the macro by pressing this button, and it's also going to help generate the binds file for you to load in the game using this button and these commands. Now you might be wondering about the slot 5 thing right here. That's a variable that ISBoxer will generate as it's creating the binds file. And if you go into the preview, it shows you what the actual macro is going to look like based on the commands you put here. So you can see if you have certain macros can be different in each window. So this invite, this is also in addition to having the slot variable, which puts in a different guy's name. It's also got this conditional part over here. This is all documented on the wiki. If you go to the WoW macro information wiki, then this is all explains all the variables and conditions that you can use in any of the macros that ISBoxer generates. So since it's the cryptic macro sets are based on the WoW macro sets, you can use the same variables and the same conditions, even though the two games have completely different commands. The variables and conditions are the same as far as ISBoxer goes. So back in ISBoxer, these conditions check if what it's going to do is it's going to check if there's a guy in slot 1, if there's a guy in slot 10. So it's kind of checking if your team has how many guys in it, and then it's checking to make sure that the guy that it's making the macro for is not in that slot. So if you go over here to the preview, you can see if you go to character 1 that it's only going to invite Joe 2, Joe 3, Joe 4, and Joe 5, whereas if I look at the macro for number 5, then he invites Joe 1, 2, 3, and 4, but not 5. So that's sort of what that's about. And you don't really have to use conditions or variables when you're making your macros. So let's set up a new macro set. When you set up a macro set, you want to name it something simple. I'm just naming it example macros. This name doesn't really matter. You can just name it something that describes your macros, maybe who's going to be assigned these macros, because you can either assign it to the whole character set or individual characters. So maybe I only want characters 2 and 4 to have a certain macro. You highlight them here and don't highlight the character set. So I'm going to enable this example just for the whole character set. And you add macros, you right click and select new cryptic macro. And name the macro something that makes sense. And you're going to have to put in commands and a key combination. So I'm going to make a macro that all it does is target self. And the command for that in Star Trek Online is target_self. Key combination, we make something up here. I'm just going to put Control T, I guess. So that way, if I load this macro and I press Control T, then in the game, the guy that does it is going to target himself. So that's assigned to the whole character set. And as soon as I go and export, this is going to generate the binds files, and since my game is up, it's refreshing the windows. And now if I go, the command in the game, you have to load the binds file yourself. So I turn on broadcasting, and in all the windows, I can type in /bind_load_file space ISBoxer-binds.txt. That's the file that ISBoxer is going to have your binds in. So enter. And now if I Control T, I'm doing this in all the windows, Control T, now each of my guys targeted himself, Joe 2, Joe 3, Joe 4. So you can see up here in the middle which guy they targeted. So that's basically it. That's how the system works. Now, something that confuses people, if you look in your Star Trek Online folder, ISBoxer-binds.txt is empty. There's nothing at all in this file. And that confuses some of the people because there's these other files. For each character, there's a separate file, and that's how it gets the different invite information, the different macros for each character, and ISBoxer is also automatically translating it so that when you type in /bind load file ISBoxer-binds.txt, it's actually making the game load one of these files depending on which slot you're in the game. So that's sort of confusing to some people who are trying to figure out which binds are loading or not loading. Don't just look at the ISBoxer-binds.txt file because it is empty, and this is normal. That's exactly how it is. And I showed you just now how it automatically loaded because I just typed in ISBoxer-binds.txt and did not specifically load any of these files for any of the guys, and they all got the key binding. So just to make that clear, that is how it's supposed to work. And if you want to verify which binds any individual window has, like I can verify which macros this guy has by typing bind_save file _ and I'll just save it as my binds.txt. Now back in that folder, let me find it again. Now I've got my binds.txt, and I can open that up and verify that's exactly the binds that this guy should have. So you see the Control T target self, and this matches up exactly with what should be in the file for guy number 5 here. So that's sort of how you can verify and test that your macros are loading correctly. And it's possible, if you look at the list of keys, it's possible to pick some of these that don't actually work in the game. Like you can pick F24 in here. And the game's not actually going to recognize F24 as a valid key binding. So if you try to export this and load it, this key binding will not work in Neverwinter, even though it's available in this list, because this list comes from Windows and what keyboard bindings Windows recognizes, and not what is specific to Neverwinter. So that pretty much sums it up, and the only other thing that I want to mention is that after you go in and change a key binding, something like this, if I export this and I load the bind file, the game is still going to have my F15 key binding, or the whichever this was set to, Control T. It's still going to have the Control T key binding in there, even after I load this file. There's another binding command in the game you might need to use, /unbind_all. And this is going to reset your key bindings in the game, but it'll unload whichever key bindings you shouldn't have anymore. For example, now if I unloaded that after my key binding is set to F24, I'll go ahead and export, and I'll load it with F24, bind underscore load file ISBoxer binds.txt. So I'm loading it again, and it's supposed to be F24 in this file. Now if I save bind save file, my binds2.txt. Now my binds2.txt should not have that key binding because that game is not going to recognize F24. But if I go back and I set it to Control T again, then that will load up again. So that's pretty much it. That's how you can use key bindings in the game and have ISBoxer generate them. That's how to test them. That's how to do everything you need to know to use the Cryptic Studios game helper to set up your macros and key bindings in Star Trek Online, Champions Online, and Neverwinter. Thanks, guys. Have fun multi-boxing in Cryptic Studios games.